All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, mainly gentlemen. Well, it could be some ladies too, right, Christian? Welcome to the official beginning of Season 2 of Q&A with TNC. If you're just listening to this for the first time, we would encourage you to go back listen to Season 1, but you don't have to. If you just picked up on this and you saw the title of what we're going to be covering today, I would encourage you guys just to continue to check this out. If you like it, we already have Season 1 out there on all your major platforms. And what makes this podcast unique, Christian, is you are where in the world right now?
I am in Southeast Asia in the nation of Thailand, Tim.
Awesome, man. And so this is interesting. I sit here about an hour north, maybe a half hour north of Tampa. So we are 12, almost, depending on the time zone situation, right? Well, 12, 13 hours away.
Right.
And we have a passion, both of us, for helping women live in victory, helping them understand what it means to follow Christ, and for that following of Jesus in their life to not be something that is looked at as passivity or looked at as being wimpy, is actually looked at as the pathway to victory. And so in today's episode, what we're going to be talking about is something extremely important. One of my favorite topics. We ended last season with stewardship, just a good understanding of what that means, okay? And that's not something that gets men excited a lot, but I hope this episode will. And the reason why I say that is because what we're going to be talking about today is something that every man has an equal amount of to steward. Every man's success will largely be determined by how they deal with this subject matter, and that is the subject of time. So when we think about stewardship, Christian, we think about, man, what are we doing with all the things that God has given? How are we using them to build his kingdom, to grow as individuals for the purpose of leading our families, leading our children, leading our communities, leading our churches? And there's no more important piece of this, in my opinion, than time. What do you think?
Well, Tim, I think it's a great topic for season 2, stewardship. And as you said, with time. And as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking of the verse in Revelation, when Jesus greets those who know him as Lord and Savior, they enter heaven and he says, "Job well done, good and faithful servant." And when I think of a faithful servant, it's someone who is a good steward of their gifts, their skills, and their responsibilities. And you really hit the nail on the head, because I think I mentioned this in season 1, but I'm going to say it again for any new listeners here in season 2. Is when I grew up, stewardship was always about the understanding I had was make sure you give your 10% every month. Be a good steward of your giving. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was always focused on, okay, make sure I give my 10%. If I make $100, give $10. If I make 1,000, give 100. So I was giving my money and I was getting good at math. But what I did, what I wasn't doing was I
Another
wasn't up.
blessing, another blessing.
Yeah, another blessing. My teachers were happy. But what I was failing to understand is that stewardship wasn't an action, it was a principle. And it wasn't rooted
Yes.
in one activity, it was rooted in my life. And really, as I began to mature in my faith, it was stewardship in everything. And can you have, wow, I mean, is there anything more important than time?
Yeah.
Like you said, there's nothing we can do to make it. We can't create time. We can't make time. I can't really buy time. I mean, I can't go to Walmart and buy a pack of 30 hours, right? So I
Yeah.
can increase my
Mm-hmm.
week. So really, time is so important. And do I steward my time well? I mean, that's a very, very good question, because look, when we get to the end of our days, what do most of us look back on? What did I do with my time? What
Amen.
legacy did I leave?
Yep.
Who have I impacted? All these questions are rooted in how I spent my time, how I stewarded my time. Where did I invest my time? And
Yep.
so this is going to be a very, I think, deep episode. But I think it's going
Agreed.
to be a very blessed episode, because I think we're going to be challenged to, if we can nail this down the rest of our life, I think we can experience blessing, influence, and bring honor to God.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree anymore, man. And I love what you said there too. At the end of your days, many times we experience the inevitability of death. And that inevitability of death oftentimes puts us our perspective changes on, wow, what am I going to do with this thing called time? Now, I introed kind of saying, hey, we're all given equal amount. I guess that's not true, right? Because we don't actually know. Maybe an equal amount every day, depending on whether or not, we're going to be quote unquote taken to heaven that day. But
Right. Right.
I guess my point is when we really think about the importance of stewarding our time, it brings us into focus. right? That's what it really
Hmm.
does. It begins to focus what are the most important things in our life. And I think one of the great distractions the enemy uses, right, Christian, is for to get us to not even think about time, to get us just to either race through a day. I know I'm guilty of that, right? Man, I can't
Right.
wait to get to the next thing. I can't wait to get to this, can't wait to get to that. And that's part of it, just our human condition. But one of the things I'd really like to drive home in this podcast is to make men aware that a time is their greatest gift and time is their greatest investment that they can make. And don't buy into the distraction that you're just running to the next thing. I know for me and some of the other men that I mentor too, one of the hardest things for them is to come to this understanding because they're so driven, right? So we're given this gift of being a driver, right? We want to provide, we want to protect, we want to take care of our family, we want to run our finances. And all that stuff is great. However, we have to have the right perspective on time because I don't know what you're seeing, Christian, but what I'm seeing is that when a person doesn't do this well, it creates chaos for them. It creates
Oh,
chaos in
that's
their life.
oh, that's so good. It does create chaos. So let's go with that because we want to bring clarity, right? We don't want men to be
Absolutely.
confused. We don't want
And
men to
practicality.
and practicality. So, what does good stewardship look like? And this is the question that I ask men. And I say, look, you understand the concept, be a good steward of time. So, if we understand the concept, then let's break it down so that it's easy to apply that concept into practical steps. And we begin with the question of, well, what does good stewardship look like? If you can tell me what it looks like, then I know either what to pursue or what to look for, what to develop, how to skill up, whatever phrase you want to use.
Yep.
And what I always say is good stewardship looks like two things. One, it's you have daily responsibilities. So be a good steward of your time so that you can meet your daily responsibilities. You need to pay your bills, you need to provide food, you need to provide
Yep.
housing, you need to provide basic necessities. So steward your time so that you work and meet your responsibilities. I think everybody can agree with that. But in
Agreed.
this
Yep.
podcast, we're talking not just to men who are wondering, what should I do with my daily time? But we're also talking to men of God who also
Yep.
say, how does my time impact eternity as well? Right? Because
Amen.
you're not going to take your water bill, you're not going to take your mortgage payment up to heaven, right?
It's like,
You
thank
know,
God.
right.
Whew.
Yeah, thank God. You're not going to take your credit card bills. So you're not taking your daily responsibilities with you, but what you are taking are your spiritual investments. So if
Yeah.
you're going to take your daily time to meet your daily responsibilities, you're also going to take your daily time to invest in the things that you can take to heaven. And what can we take to heaven, Tim? People.
Others.
That's
Others.
it.
Yep.
So your
100%.
spiritual investments is what will last for eternity, and that is people.
Yep.
And for some of us, those people are in our home, right?
Yep.
It could be our spouse, could be our children. For others of us, we have a platform that's much bigger than just the four walls of our home. But
Yep.
all of us have a spiritual investment opportunity, but not all of us invest well.
Yeah. I love that, man. And that's so true because when we think about stewarding time, if we don't think about stewarding time with what's going to last for eternity, then we don't even have the right perspective. And I love that's what you said, right? Like my one day, I had a pastor friend one day look at me and he goes, Tim, he goes, everything's going to burn away. You know that, right? Everything on this earth will burn away. And listen, there's nothing wrong with going out there and providing. There's nothing wrong about the daily responsibilities. I love how you said that, right? Because sometimes we can have this unbelievable knee-jerk reaction to just say, well, I should sell everything and do everything possible, to just go out and become a street evangelist. And it's like, well, hold on, time out. Like I, I understand your passion for that, and that's great. You're right. You're going in the right direction here. However, in order for people to thrive, in order for people to be able to grow in their relationship, in order for your children to feel secure, for your wife to feel secure, there's certain things that you got to do as a man. And if you don't do those things well, it will affect how you ultimately are going to be using your time.
That's
Right. And
right.
so I love what you said there too, and what it makes me think of is what does this look like practically for a man, right? So we get the idea, okay, hey, listen, we've got to prioritize our time in an eternal perspective. So what does that look like for me and my household, right? So I can't prioritize my ability to do this well if I'm not prioritizing my time with God every day. Number
So,
one,
oh, that's
right?
a great
I've
starting point. That is the
I've got to,
foundation. Hmm.
it is, and I've got to be growing, right? And people get all whacked out and confused about this. And listen, there are so many tools out there for you to grow in God, so many tools for you to grow in your relationship with Jesus. whether you're using the Bible app or you're in a small group, or you're just literally opening God's word. We have a lot of men in our men's group who come in, never really read their Bible before. And I don't know about you, but kind of my perspective on this is I tell them, just learn about Jesus. You may not understand it all. That's okay. But listen, you just came into the saving relationship with God. Your life is going to be completely different now in a good way. And I want you to learn about who he is in the Gospels. If you burn through all four of them, read them again, read them again.
Yep.
And we take this journey with them so that they can begin to understand, number one, this concept of the stewardship of time. But number two, there's nobody that did it better. There's nobody that stewarded time better than Jesus. There's nobody and then the early church as that launched. So, from a practical standpoint, we need to start there. How can I make sure that every day I'm spending the proper amount of time that I need to with God, that I'm, this may be a little advanced, but I'm walking in a prayer posture on the regular, that it's a constant interaction during the day with God. It's not just, hey, I'm going to put him in this 30-minute box at the beginning of my day. Well, okay, we can start there. I get that, because we're renewing our minds. We're doing Romans 12:2, which says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds to know the perfect and pleasing will of God. So we have to do those things, and I get all that. But I'm gonna kick it back over to you just for your thoughts on this, because I know you deal with a lot of this with men. How do we guide men initially so that they can understand this? And then we get some other points too from a practicality once we move beyond that.
Right. Well, I think what you say is great, right? Spending time with Jesus is most important, right? If we want to live a spiritual life, we have to have spiritual strength, okay? And our spiritual strength comes from reading God's word and spending
Yep.
time with Jesus himself through times of prayer, worship, and allowing the Holy Spirit to work in us and through us. So again, a spiritual life comes through spiritual strength. But I can just imagine somewhere in the world right now, there's a man thinking or wanting to like just scream at this podcast and be like, guys, what you're sharing is great, but you don't know me. My life is too busy and I don't have the time. I can
Mm.
just imagine that there's a man saying, I don't have the time. And I want you to come back for that man. I want you to come back and listen to episode 2, but I'm not sure if you will after what I say here in episode 1. And what I'm going to say is you do have the time, but
I was that guy.
you're not prioritizing your time,
Absolutely. I was that guy. I was that
right?
guy, Christian. I
Me
mean,
too.
that's
Me
that's
too.
straight up, right? And how
Right.
much, and keep going, and then I'll jump in.
Well, I was just going to say, and I've been in the same boat, right? I mean, how many times, I mean, if I had a dime, 10 cents for every time I said I don't have the time, I'd at least have $100. But
Yeah.
there's all these guys who say, I don't have the time. I'm like, no, that's not true. Because you do have
Correct.
the time to watch 6 football games on Sunday or a
That's right.
double header on Wednesday or to
Yep.
play golf. Now, look, I love golf. I've got no problem with golf, right? But
Yep.
it takes 4 hours to play a round. All right.
Easy. Easy
So,
4 hours.
and if you play like I do, it takes 5 or 6 hours to make your way around the course. So, actually, gentlemen, we do have the time, but the real issue is, are we prioritizing our time? And you are
Yeah.
prioritizing your time by the things that you do. So, again, it's how to prioritize your time to the things that make a difference. And
Yeah.
now, again, I
Uh,
can see a man saying, I want to play golf to relax. That's great. But again, we have to prioritize and set that time aside. If we don't prioritize it, it's not going to happen on its own. It's not going to happen on its own.
Yeah. And I would just encourage you too, if you're listening to this, man, you're ready to turn this off, get with somebody who does this well. Get with a person who has a level of success in their life so they can explain to you, what does this practically look like? Because here's the benefit. On the other side of beginning to do this, you're going to create more. I don't want to say create more time. You're going to create more margin in your life, which is going to free up more of this time. And then all of a sudden you're beginning to realize, oh my goodness, great. I have, how did I get this bonus 4 hours during the day, right? Because God's word is going to allow you to not only prioritize what's important, but it's going to deprioritize things that just don't have the value. Nothing wrong with watching football, nothing wrong with going golfing, nothing wrong with these things. I would actually argue, if you don't prioritize or you don't create time for rest, then you'll burn out. Right. So we get two different
Yeah,
sides of this coin. We get the
right.
coin,
I
we get
would
the guy
agree.
that's just like, man, I don't have any time and I can't do this and I'm so busy. Well, here's what I have found with those men. And those men are oftentimes very successful entrepreneurs. They got multiple businesses and they are just constantly on the go. But I'll tell you this, when they start doing it God's way, Christian, their profits go up, their time with their family gets better, their relationships gets better. And the reason why is because they're putting God in front of all of these things. God can't bless you, your family, your stuff if you don't obey what he has called you to do and how to prioritize your life. And I know that's hard sometimes to hear from men, right? Well, I don't know. Well, listen, if it doesn't work out, then he's not true to his word. And we know that can't be true. It has
Mhm.
worked out every single time I've had this discussion with a man. And I've looked at him and I've just said, well, what is and we'll start off small, right? What is 15 or 20 minutes in the morning? What is 15 or 20 minutes more? Put your phone down, put the distractions away and spend 15 or 20 minutes. And he'll come back to me that next week and he'll go, "Hey, Tim, we just closed the biggest deal of our that we've ever done. Hey, Tim, I got more peace in my household now because I'm putting the prioritization of time in my life. And once we get that done, then I take the next step. Okay, what's your prioritization in your marriage look like? When's the last time you've taken your wife on a date, right? When's the last time you just sat with her and said, tell me how you're doing? Tell me how you're doing emotionally. Tell me how you're doing physically, spiritually. And all of a sudden, they get this unbelievable sense of peace because that's the key, right? When we prioritize time, chaos goes down and peace comes in. And that's what I have seen, Christian, over and over and over again with men that are whether they're there's I feel like there's two extremes, right? Whether they're just lazy, if you will, and they're unmotivated, and then they start putting these barriers and these boundaries and these different priorities of time in their life, or they're just wildly busy and they start putting these in place. What I have seen come in on the regular for the man that's just not motivated enough, I've seen great things as far as his new level of motivation, as far as taking the leadership of his home. All these different things come into his life because he has decided to do time God's way. And then on the flip side, I've seen it with the man who's just super busy. All of a sudden, his stress level goes down, his businesses are better, his employment is better, and there's more peace in his household. And the common element that I usually get from him, especially if he's got kids, is, man, I get to spend more time with my children this weekend. I finally decided to kind of get my priorities right in my life because when you do your priorities God's way, time becomes easier to manage because it things just get clear, right? Oftentimes these things are a battle of clarity, right? How can I get the truth in my life to know how to deal with this, get the clarity to get the peace? Is that what you see with men you deal with?
Oh, as I'm listening to you, I'm in total agreement. It is about that priority, and as we do time God's way, as we prioritize, and as you were saying that, I was thinking of a word, value,
Mm,
value.
yeah.
And I want to add for our listeners, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. And here's a lesson I learned, both for you and for anybody else who might be listening is I learned to prioritize time when I learned to value relationships.
Well said.
You
Well
know,
said.
if I'm going to prioritize time with God, why? Because I value the relationship with Him. If I'm going to
Mm,
prioritize time with my wife, why? Because I value the relationship with her.
yeah.
If you're a single guy and you're going to prioritize time for your singles group or your men's group or your friends, why? Because of what you can get from them? Not always, but it's because you value some aspect of that relationship. And so, as I'm looking at my own life and reflecting back, I'm like, I think for me, Tim, that was a really big key. It's I needed to know how do I steward time? Okay, I steward
Yep.
time by prioritizing my time. But what is the motivator for prioritizing my time? Was it so I could get more done? Well, not really. I'm a finite individual, meaning I have limited
Yep.
time, limited energy, and I still require sleep every night,
That's right. Me too, by the way.
right? Yeah, sleep plus a lot of coffee the following morning.
That's right.
But I began to prioritize time because then I began to recognize, wow, I prioritize time for the things I love. And
Hmm.
if I remember about spiritual investments, like we talked about earlier, spiritual investments, there's only one I can take with me, people.
Yep.
So
No, I love it.
prioritizing time, loving people, valuing relationships,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
here's the
that's the
thing
key.
too,
I think that's the
and
key.
I think as a man, this is what drives us, right? We put our time in things that we value. For men, I don't think men are sitting there as far as I know. I haven't really met a lot of men that are like, I just like wasting time. It's super fun. I like wasting time. I like doing things that have no value to me. Now, here's the thing about value.
Yeah.
What drives our value? Right? That's the next question, I think, that what is it that drives our value? And when we enter a relationship with God and we start growing in our relationship with Jesus and we're in our Bible every single day, he will change what we value. And don't be scared about that as a man. Don't run from that as a man. You want more peace, you want more success, you want more fulfillment, you want more value in your life. Value the things that God values. And next thing you know, the peace comes. the success comes. I remember in my career, Christian, being consumed by, how can I put it? Being consumed by the desire to succeed. But it was interesting because the being consumed by the desire to succeed, I had two ways to look at this. The world's way. What does the world's way say? Don't spend more. You got to spend more time. You got to burn. You got to go. You got to do it. You got to spend more time. Time. You got to put in the 50, 60, 70 hour, 80 hours a week. And I will tell you, boy, that created chaos in my life, created chaos in my marriage, created chaos in my relationships. One time in my life, I was working a full-time job and I started a business because, man, I gotta provide. I gotta do what's necessary. So I'm burning the candle at both ends. Yes, God's involved in my life, but he's not on the throne, right? I'm trying to run the throne. I'm trying to do everything that I possibly can. And it was out of just purely, I guess, ignorance, really, when it came down to it, and my hard-headedness. And so I start hitting the wall with the inability to see peace in my life, and chaos is reigning. And so I got to the point where I just said, all right, you know what? What is going on here? I had to step back, had to get with a mentor, and had to start asking some hard questions. And those hard questions were, where am I putting my time? And am I getting a return? So part of the way I believe that God validates our time investment is the return that we get on it, right? And so the return that I began to get when I stepped back, closed the business, said, you know what, God, if you're going to bring prosperity into my life, if you're going to provide, if you're going to do whatever is necessary for me to be able to pay my bills and to quote unquote get ahead, whatever that looks like, because we can get into that too, I'm going to trust you. And that was big for me, stepping back and saying, I'm going to trust you. And I made it kind of an agreement with God and a pact with myself that I wasn't going to go and ever ask for more money. Wasn't going to do it, right? We see that all the time in the world. Man, I'm going to go to my boss and I'm going to ask for a raise. I said, you know what, God, I can't do this anymore. I literally hit like an end, a wall in my life. And it was because I didn't prioritize my time properly. So I started stepping back. I started prioritizing time in my relationships with my wife. This was pre-children. Started, prioritizing time with church. And I will tell you what happened over the next 5 to 10 years was absolutely astounding, Christian. I'm talking through a series of only God events. And we maybe can cover these in a later podcast, but it's not really relevant to the people that are listening. But through a series of only God events, my income went up 100%, 200%, 300%, 400%. And this is not, I wasn't doing anything different. I was not doing any better of a job necessarily in my workplace. I stepped back, I did time God's way, and God rewarded it. And I really want to hammer that home, right? When we steward time properly, you can expect God's reward. And that's okay as a man. It's okay to expect God's reward when you do things his way, because that's who he is. He's not a God that just wants your obedience for the purpose of, being a dictator in your life. No, his purposes of you being obedient to how you steward time and get your priorities right in your life is so that he can turn around and fulfill his promises to bless you. And that's not prosperity doctrine. That's what the Bible says. When you are obedient to what I'm going to call you to do in your relationships and with your time, that's what I'm going to turn around and pour out on you.
Oh, I love how you share that testimony because I think there's a way that people can connect with that. We're not just sharing ideas, we're just not sharing theories. We're sharing, look, we're living this. Like what you
Amen.
shared, I decided to do God's time his way and there were blessings to that, you know.
So many.
The chaos went away, the intimacy increased. I was able to, direct my time to the things that had an eternal significance and yet God still met my basic needs and more.
And
And I
more.
think and I think that gives hope to a lot of men because I think so many times I've met men, they're like, so wait a minute, if I love God, that means I'm gonna have to become some sort of spiritual guru in a robe on the world's highest mountain during a
and
snowstorm, right?
and have
And you're
and
like,
have no food
no, and have no food, and
and
it's
just
just me
suffer.
and the llamas, right? And it's like, no, it's not just you and the llamas. God is in a relationship. He wants a relationship with you, and his way is best. And he
Yeah.
provides and he guides. So I think the question I would like to leave, our listeners around the world is, look, I can imagine that you might be listening thinking, all right, so I've listened to you guys talk and I realize I've been the world's worst steward for the last 25 years.
That was
Maybe,
me. That was me
right,
that was me about
right,
25 years ago.
right. That might
Well,
have
less
been me
than that.
last
I'm not that
week,
old.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
that,
That's
that might
right.
have been me last week. But what I love about God's grace is today's a new day.
It
His
is.
mercies are new every day. And
Every
yeah,
day they're
maybe
new.
Right. And maybe you've been a bad steward yesterday. Maybe you've been a bad steward last week. Maybe you've been a bad steward for a lot longer than you want to admit. But today is a new day. It's
Yep.
never late to start new, to try new, to come to God and be like, Lord, I need your help. I love the truth. I want to steward my time. I need help. Let me start today. And that would be my
Yeah.
encouragement to men. It's never, ever, ever too late to start today.
Amen. And I will just add to that too. When I begin to steward in this season of my life, when I began to step back and steward my time properly and my relationships properly, it didn't happen overnight. This was a process, right? But in that process, God met me on day one, Christian. I remember it, man. It was like the peace when I stepped back and I did two things. I said, God, I'm going to prioritize time your way, and I'm going to take my hands off the wheel. A lot of men listening to this understand that, right? They feel the pressure of needing to provide. They feel the pressure of all, paying the bills, all that type of stuff. And sometimes what comes with that pressure is the desire to control. And when we don't have that in check, listen, there's nothing wrong with controlling what God has given you and using it for his glory. Nothing wrong with that. But the key piece to that is God in control first? Is he guiding where you're supposed to be putting your time? Is he guiding where you're supposed to be putting your money? But whatever that looks like, and then you go out and you control, if you will, or you steward, I guess is a better way to really think about it, what you do with that and how you run to that mission field and how you increase God's kingdom there. So I just encourage, I love that you said that because it is so true. His mercies are new every day. For that first week, it was a gut punch, but I will tell you, I had more peace in my life that week. And how oftentimes do we see God doing the exact opposite of what the world teaches? And it doesn't have to make sense, right? Like we don't, the peace that surpasses all understanding doesn't make sense to us. It's supernatural peace. But at the end of the day, there's nothing better because we can sit there as believers, as men, and go, you know what? This is antithetical to culture. Well, guess what? God is. Jesus was antithetical to culture. He went against the grain. But there's a great reward and blessing with going against the grain. And what I love teaching men, Christian, and this kind of goes along with what you said as we wrap up here, going against culture, going against what the world tells you to do is not a difficult calculation. And what I mean by that is examine what happens to men when they follow what the world does, right? Many men are just doing this blindly. They're thinking, okay, the world tells me I got to go work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I got to do whatever. Well, okay, let's look at what that does that make your family better? Does it make your kids better? Does it make your community better? Does it make your church better? And the answer oftentimes is, at least from what I've seen, 90% of the times, is absolutely not. It does not. It does not increase your peace. It does not increase your ability to have margin in your life to spend time when a brother from your men's group calls you up and says, "Hey, man, I'm in bad shape. I need you to come pray with me. I need you to come." Who knows we just went through two hurricanes here in Florida. Maybe the brother calls you up and says, "Hey, come cut down a tree." Well, if I don't have margin in my life, I can't do that, right? And so just be encouraged that I know this may sound different than what the world has taught you or what you may even have been taught, but just keep going. It is worth it when you start making these little changes every single day, when you begin to steward your time. There is blessing, there is reward to it. And ultimately, what you're going to find is peace. And then that peace will be transmitted to the people around you and the relationships around you. And to bring it full circle, Christian, that day when you're on your deathbed and God is going to take you, if you're blessed with that ability, some people are taken a lot sooner, right? You'll be able to sit there and look at the people surrounding you, and those will be the people that you invested your time with. Those will be the people that you value the most. We just talked about this in our men's group on Tuesday that, the people, when they're on their deathbed, they're looking for those around them, for those that they've put their legacy into. And you can't do that without understanding this great concept of stewarding your time. Any final thoughts, brother?
Yeah, steward your time, prioritize your time, love people with your time. That
Well
would be my
said.
final thought.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in to another episode with Q&A with T and Say. Please leave your questions. Leave the topics that you want us to discuss. We would love to continue to jump on those. This topic today of stewardship and the season on stewardship comes out of this exact concept. Christian and I hear from men all around the globe, him more than I'm more localized, but these issues don't change. They're the issues that men deal with, whether you're in Southeast Asia or in America or in Latin America. These are the issues that men deal with. And so we want to hear from you. We want to tackle those issues from a biblical understanding, not only just the concept, but practically what does this look like? And we're blessed to have you. So share, like this podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Good night. Goodbye. Good morning.